Well, thanks to you. You are awesome. There's nobody quite like Lara Izara, and I mean, you've done such an amazing job, not just organising today and the next few days, but Irish Studies in Brazil, building on and working with Munira over the years. What you've achieved here is quite remarkable, and this is just a special milestone and highlight. But it does give me such privilege, Laura, to be in conversation with Stephen. He doesn't really need much of an introduction, but you know what? I'm going to say a few words because it's not often that I get to introduce somebody who I'm really proud to say is a friend. I've known Stephen now for, God, 30 years maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. I'm certainly heading towards that. And we have homes on a very special island called Critch Island. And so for us both to happen to be here in São Paulo at the same, we couldn't have planned it, Stephen.
No,
I mean, anyway, but he's Ireland's greatest actor. And sometimes sometimes when I see him on the beach, or I don't think of him that way because I know Stephen, the person, the father, the man. So it's lovely to be here in a professional context. Just saying, Stephen, your contribution to the theatre has been extraordinary. Your contribution to film has been extraordinary, but also to television, but also as an activist. I mean, you do it all. And as we have this conversation, I'm hoping some of the highlights might come out. You'll talk a little bit, but I'd love to start with Field Day, partly because we spent the last 6 classes talking about Field Day, but you were so key in making Field Day happen, and I'd love you to tell that story.
Yeah, well, they sort of know about Field Day, yeah?
Not really.
No.
Not from your perspective. They've heard my version of it.
Well, the first job I did was in the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, you know, and the reason I was attracted to that was because of its revolutionary place in terms of Irish independence. And also there was the very important fact that the Anglo-Irish and the native Irish came together in a very powerful way. So I always wanted to savor that, you know. And of course all the revolutionary energy had gone by the time I went there, you know, and I think all the Anglo-Irish had gone as well. Which is no harm about it, you know. Not too upset about that, but so then I took myself off to England. But the thing is that I always said I don't want to be just an actor. I want to be an Irish actor, and because that's I wanted to involve myself in the situation that pertained in Ireland. I wanted to work on that through art. I know that sounds so pretentious, but I did, you know, and the moment arose when I'd been working in England for some time and learning everything from really very important people who always complained about my Irish accent. and I was home, and I found that there was some money available to put on a play. And I thought, well, who will I go and talk to? And I went and spoke to Brian Friel, who I'd worked with before in a play called Freedom of the City, which was about Bloody Sunday. This was the time when 13 people were shot by the British Army, and we had a rapport. And I went and I said to him, "Would you feel like writing a play that we could perform around the country?" And he said, "Well, I'm working on a play at the moment, and he didn't know what the title was at that time, but it was to become translations, which probably is maybe the most significant Irish play in the last, I don't know how many years, really. And so it was a kind of astonishing moment in 1980 when there were hunger strikes going on, there was all kinds of mayhem occurring, and he had written this play which was very much about the cultural damage that was being done to people, losing their language. And we did that in the Guildhall in Derry, which was a symbol of British power in Derry, really, to be honest. And so it blew the audience away, and people who'd never been in a theatre before were just overwhelmed by it. And I'd always believed that if you want to interest people in theatre, you have to interest people who haven't been in the theatre before. You don't want just people who have got a critical sense of, oh yes, what Shakespeare, no, these were people who thought this was about their life, And so that was very, and it had an enormous impact. And then the following year we did a production of Three Sisters that Brian had translated from the Chekhov, the original Russian. And on the opening night, the British Army flew over the Guildhall and drowned out all the dialogue. And I said to everyone, you see, they realize how important theatre is because they want to silence it. Yeah. And so it's always, it's hugely, and we kept doing things, and we started then doing literary work with the great Seamus Dean, the anthology of Irish literature, pamphlets. Edward Said was one of the contributors. Edward Said said about Field Day, he said, I wish Palestine had a field day, because they weren't always just reduced to futile recourse to violence and all that, And anyway, so I think now they're all dead mostly. Friel's dead, Heaney's dead, Dean's dead. I'm not far off,
He's warm.
But no, it's and I can tell you then one of the things that really gives me immense pleasure in Ireland at the moment. There are young musicians there who would blow your mind. They are so great, and we have such great poets. And so I've been doing some evenings with the musicians and reading poetry of Derek Mahon and Heaney and all of them. But it's so exhilarating to work on that, and how they're going places. These musicians, you know what I mean? They're inspired by Sean O'Reilly, inspired by the whole tradition, but they're going unusual places. And so
Field Day, Stephen, was founded back in 1980, and I suppose there's been 42 years now of Field Day. I mean, the cultural contribution that it made is enormous, not just in Ireland, but globally. And we had a conference a couple of years ago in Dublin where we had that afternoon where we were assessing, if you want, the impact of Field Day. But now looking back after all those, after a period of time, you must feel hugely proud of what you achieved. Or how do you feel about the long-term impact of Field Day, the plays, the anthology, but the pamphlets? I mean, as a collective, it really was remarkable.
Oh, well, it was, yeah. I mean, it was astonishing. But everything runs out of energy to a certain extent. I mean, that's what I discovered with the Abbey, you know, that... but then we picked up where the Abbey left off, in a way.
Yeah.
And with the political situation that existed now, you know, but, you know, what happened in Ireland after independence was all the energy went out of the idea of liberation, you know. And so that is why, for instance, the wonderful film that we're really here to talk about, the Secrets of Putumayo, that, of course, that contains some of the energy of the revolution because of Roger Casement, and who was a man absolutely punished horribly for his contribution to Irish independence, and a genius of a man, and a great man, by the way, for art as well. He gave the McPeak family, who great County Derry musicians, he bought a set of pipes for them because piping had ceased to exist in the north, and in that way helped restore a whole sense of traditional music in the north. Very, very thrilling, you know. And the great revolutionaries are all artists as well, you know, aren't they? I think that's,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
And well, they were, if you think of the
1916.
1916.
Yeah.
You know, they
Playwrights, poets.
Poets, yeah.
The Cultural Revolution, though, Yeats, Tagore, you know, that whole movement is phenomenal. And I see Field Day as being the equivalent of that Cultural Revolution for the later period. That's the historian in me speaking. But before let me move, maybe.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Stephen, we've been reading Making History.
Yeah.
And I'd love, simply because we've been working on it in class, but you know, as a play, obviously it was performed in 1988 in the Guildhall in Derry. You took it round, I don't know, 29 locations. I saw it in 1989 when it opened in London. I think it was at the National in London.
It was a co-production with the National.
Yeah, but it's, as a play, it's not one. Translations is the one that everybody knows, and it's just on in the Abbey at the moment, or it was recently. But Making History didn't have that prominence that many of the other Friel plays did. But it's one that, as a historian, I've really enjoyed and obviously talk a lot about. But I'm just lovely to hear about your take on Making History.
Well, you know, translations was something extraordinarily special. Other people have tried to do plays about Hugh O'Neill. It's, you know, it is difficult, and because there's some devices that Friel uses in translations which are theatrically very sophisticated and very clever. Like, everybody speaks in English, but by the ones that speak, you know that they're either speaking in Irish or maybe they're speaking in Latin and all that. And I played Hugh O'Neill, and I would have loved to have had the sense that he was a man of two cultures, because he had been adopted by an English family and had English as an equal language to his Irish, but so I found that hard. It didn't work for me. That didn't work. I also, I'm not, without being negative or critical, I think that sometimes Friel in this finds it hard to lift the play above the debate, you know. And in translations, of course, it's so much more than the debate. It's every character is identified by what they stand for, and so I think it's a difficult play. I do really.
Yeah.
But my two sons,
Yeah.
when we were doing it in London, my first son was born, and Hugh Neal talks about sons all the time. And I left the hospital, went down to, he was born in London, I went down to do the play, and every time I mentioned my son, I had a big, broad smile on my face. So the tragedy of Hugh Neal kind of was overshadowed slightly.
But he's not called Hugh.
It's not. No, well, I can't call anybody Hugh Rea, can I? No.
Sorry.
But no. Anyway, it's a very, very significant play.
Will you read a wee bit?
Well, yeah.
Just even one, just because we've been working on it in class. Well, I was going to say, everybody up for a little bit of yes,
Well,
please.
Well, as I'm going to say to you, as I've said, I think before, that Friel is not great at love scenes. In fact, he has written the worst Irish love scenes since O'Casey. Really. It's true. Now, if anybody tells his wife that I said that, I will kill you. No, it's true. He doesn't. He's from the wrong generation, I used to say to Friel, the difference between you and me is you were born before rock and roll and I was born after it. And he said, what does that mean? I said, well, if you don't know what it means, that explains everything. Doesn't it? Really, it's true. It's true. So what, do you want me to read this?
Yeah, whatever you feel like reading.
Well, I'm not going to do different voices for all these characters. Well, O'Neill says, and I hear you're writing our history, Peter, he says to Lombard. Harry has been talking, says Lombard. Have you begun? No, only checking some events and dates. And when your checking is done, then I suppose I'll try to arrange the material into a shape, eventually, and interpret what you've gathered. Not interpret you, just describe, without comment. I'll just try to tell the story of what I saw and took part in as accurately as I can. But you'll tell the truth. I'm no historian, Hugh. I'm not even sure I know what the historian's function is, not to talk of his method, but you'll tell the truth. If you're asking me, will my story be as accurate as possible? Of course it will. But are truth and falsity the proper criteria? I don't know. Maybe when the time comes, my first responsibility will be to tell the best possible narrative. Isn't that what history is? A kind of storytelling. Is it? Imposing a pattern on events that were mostly casual and haphazard and shaping them into a narrative that is logical and interesting. Oh, yes, I think so. And where does the truth come into all this? I'm not sure that truth is a primary ingredient. Is that a shocking thing to say? Maybe when the time comes, imagination will be as important as information. But one thing I will promise you, nothing will be put down on paper for years and years. History has to be made before it's remade. Now, see, I don't know what Brian's attitude is to Irish history,
You don't?
Well, the thing is that Irish history is very much ignored by people who still have a strong influence in it. Liz Truss, for instance. But these people, they have a shocking influence on it. And it's very distressing. And, the whole thing about Hugh Neal having to get banished from Ireland, and that's the beginning of the end of we're told, of the Gaelic civilization. But it wasn't just that, because as we know, when the English poet Edmund Spenser came, you've heard this, yeah. he wrote a nice little text to Queen Elizabeth and said, if you want to take Ireland, you have to kill the poets. And of course he was a poet, but he wasn't a poet. He was a courtly poet. The Irish poets were central to the Irish culture, and to destroy that, which is why I'm so pleased about the poets that we have now, and the music is being restored.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge restoration going on, but it's taken nearly 400 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I'm so interested in what Aurelia and Angus have done with the thing about Putumayo is to feel those indigenous people recovering.
Yeah.
Because we're all at a loss if they don't.
Yeah.
I believe.
Oh no, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's happening all over the world, and the indigenous people are asserting themselves again. You know, the Australian Aborigines, the New Zealand Maori, and I just did a series for BBC and Amazon called The English, which is about the destruction of the Native Americans. It's written and directed and produced by a man called Hugo Blick, who's a truly, truly brilliant artist. And for the first time, all the Native Americans in the show were played by real Native Americans. And I would urge you to watch it when it comes out. And
What's your part?
well, I play a very nice Irish sheriff. And I help the chief of the Native Americans. I help him escape.
Okay.
Because I tell him you can't hang around here any longer because they're going to hang you. Yeah.
Brilliant. So when should we look forward to watching this, Stephen?
Well, I don't know. There's actually, unusually, there's going to be 2 episodes screened at the London Film Festival in October, which is very unusual for a television thing to be in the film festival, and then I presume beginning of next year. Maybe.
Yeah, brilliant.
But isn't it? I mean, it's an incredible piece of work. You know, just getting inside that whole issue of these poor old. I mean, when you think it's as recently as when Trump came in, he stopped them. They had a sacred piece of land that they were going to receive again, and I said, no, we're putting a pipeline through it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's anyway.
I'm going to take you back to the stage, if I may, for a moment, because I don't know how many actors in the world have had 3 major playwrights, in a sense, write for them, maybe more than that. Brian Friel, obviously Sam Shepard, and David Ireland. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary. And maybe, can you say a few words about the relationship with Shepard and Ireland? Because, I mean, it's really quite, again, the story is fascinating.
Well, you see, I've a lot of history in theatre, and one of the great periods of it was when I went to England first, and I didn't feel very spirited by having worked in the Abbey. And then one of the great things that happened was there was a huge surge in what Americans were doing. And also, of course, Polish people were doing a lot of experimental theatre, and I fell in with a group of people who were doing this, you know. And then Sam Shepard came to England, and we became close friends, really, for the rest of his life. And that's one of the things I did with Field Day was when I revived it, I did a couple of plays of Sam's, and very exciting, tremendous guy, absolutely unbelievable, and and we worked a good bit in England and in London, and we never lost touch. And so, yeah. But I worked with a lot of great Irish playwrights as well, like Tom Murphy and Tom Kilroy and
Frank McGuinness.
Frank McGuinness, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was very lucky, you know. And who else did you say?
David Ireland, Cypress Avenue.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, David Ireland's an extraordinary writer. He comes from a very... he comes from a very, very hard, difficult, loyalist background in Belfast, and his father had killed a lot of Catholics and was killed himself in return for that, and so David has had it rough. But his writing is sensational, and I think Cypress Avenue is extraordinary, an extraordinary play.
I'm not sure people have seen it here in Brazil, but I know Maria Rita, one of your students, is translating Cypress Avenue into Portuguese, so hopefully it'll get more currency here. I saw it in Dublin, I saw it in New York, I saw it in London. I mean, it's phenomenal, but it's really... I guess there are 4 or 5 actors, but you must have about 80% of the... I mean, it's, from your perspective, what a play.
Well, I always ask for 80%.
Yeah, well, maybe it's more, Stephen, but I mean, it's as if you're the only actor on the stage.
Well, it's a huge role, and and maybe one of the best roles I've ever had, you know, and I'm very extraordinarily fond of David. And the interesting thing is, he went to a school in Belfast, which is called Inst. It's a very posh Protestant school, but he was taught there by a man called Frank. He's a Catholic. He was taught all his English by a Catholic teacher, which only tells me that we got to have more Catholics teaching prods. But really, you've got to break down these absurd barriers. He taught him all about Shakespeare and everything, and then he went to Glasgow, and then he met a fella from Dublin called Frank Deasy, who is unfortunately dead now, but he taught him everything too. He carried that on, and it's no good pushing each other away. We've got to grab each other by the arm, haven't we? I mean, really, but I have to say he's the most extraordinary writer. Extraordinary. Yeah. But then I worked with people like Harold Pinter.
Yeah.
I worked with Samuel Beckett. Yeah.
The who's who.
Well, you know, I thought if I was an Irish actor, I could do anything, rather than, you know. And
what about film? I don't know, have people seen Crying Game? Because, what was that, 1992? To see a film like that at that moment, I mean, it was extraordinary. I think it's probably still one of my favourite films. My mother is 86. And Stephen knows her well. And the best film I've ever seen is what she has to say about Crying Game. But I mean, it really was a phenomenal, and that relationship with Neil Jordan as well, a very powerful one.
Yeah, well, I just saw, the first film I did with Neil was his first film as well. It was called Angel. And I watched a screening of it a few weeks ago at a film festival, and it's astonishing what he achieved for a young man who was doing his first film. It was very reminiscent of 60s French movies, but it was pure genius, and it was about a guy who's going mad, but you don't see him going mad. He's just very quiet and brilliant. And then I did another movie with him, but then he came along with The Crying Game, and really that is the best movie I've ever been in.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's phenomenal, and it prefaces a whole lot of these concerns that all kids have now about gender and trans things, and if you haven't seen it, I'll tell you what it's about.
Go on.
Well, I'll tell you by saying that when it was shown in China, the Chinese title for it was, "Oh no, my girlfriend has a penis." It's true. So now do you get it?
Wow.
I know.
And
Well,
as an actor, I mean, you're 20 years ahead of your time.
well, I mean, look. It was. She's going to call the police. No, Neil's a genius,
Yeah.
He's
The
really
helicopter.
God, yeah. It was. I mean, it was. I mean, when he said to me, "Come here, I want to tell you about this movie I'm going to do," and it was that, it was but he told me the story of it. He didn't just give me a script. He told me the story, and then he came to the bit and he says, and she's a man, and I said, "Well, I'll do it," because it's just, the chance of a lifetime.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And and everything he's done has been, look. Recently, there's this whole thing, Michael Collins, the film, and he grabs the moment so perfectly.
Yeah. And how did you feel being Broy, the informer in that?
Oh well, I was on the right side though.
Oh, of course you were, and suffered for it.
I know, but actually, the Ned Broy didn't get killed. The real Ned Broy didn't get killed.
Yeah.
And I've met quite a few of his relatives since.
Have you?
Yeah, I've met his daughter and some of his nephews and things. But everybody was like, why everybody was thrilled about that was because there'd been talk previously that there'd be an American production of the Michael Collins story, and Kevin Costner might play Collins and everything. But then when we did it, and it was all the Irish people were out in the streets, playing the extras, doing it was really like a wonderful moment of not so much celebrating Irish history because it's very rough history, but just experiencing it for ourselves.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
No, that's Neil. Neil's absolutely
Genius.
Yeah. I'm very, very fortunate.
Yeah. I love End of the Affair as well. I mean, you've done some amazing films over the years, and always so different. And the English accent, you can put on an English accent when it suits you.
Yes. I know. But you see, the thing is, I didn't want to be told. What I used to say was, why do I have to pretend I'm English before I can pretend I'm Russian?
Yeah.
Or why do I? Now, we know that in Ireland there's there are English accents which are Hiberno English is really Shakespearean English.
Right.
It's and we could do it more effectively than the language of balding Hanoverians.
Talking of Russia, another one of my personal favourites is the BBC did a 6-part adaptation of War and Peace, and Stephen plays Zaragan, isn't it? I mean, it's
I forget his name.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it was Zaragan. Maybe not.
Cool.
Anyway, it's brilliant. If you haven't seen it, you're filming in St. Petersburg. There's a whole cast of these sort of up-and-coming, younger, especially female actors.
They were fantastic. And the guy who did the version.
Oh, it's Karagan. Anyway.
I don't think so.
Somebody check it.
Anyway, no, they were all brilliant, and the version was absolutely superb. And yeah, but I mean, there are absurd things they do in the BBC. Like they say, oh, anybody who's playing a Russian will have an English accent, and anybody who's playing a French person will have a French accent. Oh, God. Where's the logic? Anyway, but anyway, I won't be back in St. Petersburg for quite a while, will I?
No, you won't. Yeah, no, none of us will. It's no. But it's sort of, again, I don't know. We're coming. I don't want to. Stephen flew in today. It's literally your first time in Brazil, is it?
It is, yeah.
And how's so good so far?
Oh, it's marvelous. No, I love it. Of course I do. Except that the thing is, I've left this beautiful summery weather in Ireland, and I'm absolutely freezing. But look, I want to tell you, I'm so glad to be here to help promote one of the best things that I've ever been in. No. And I'm very proud of my own work in it, because it kind of created a sense of what Roger Casement might sound like, because there's no record of of his voice. So the three of us down in the studio in Dublin came up with something that I was very, very proud of, and I think the film is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful history for both our country and your country. You know. So please go and see it.
Yeah, I saw it at the Galway Film Festival, I guess last summer. It's absolutely amazing. So just to reiterate, and you're brilliant in it, but again, congratulations to Aurelio, and obviously Angus and Laura and the whole team that works so hard to pull it together. I appreciate it. I mean, it's not easy to do these things. It's brilliant. But in terms of the relationship with Brazil, obviously it's your first visit. Hopefully it's not going to be your last, Stephen, because I think I've been 7 or 8 times now. And São Paulo is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's the most amazing country, and you need to go up to the Amazon and go to Manaus and actually experience other parts of the country, because I think, I mean, it's amazing. Maybe the future. What does the future hold? And then I'm happy to take a few questions if anybody has any. But just in terms of what next, as if you haven't done enough.
Well, I know I'm waiting for the English to come out, see what happens there.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Frank McGuinness has done a version of Moliere's what's it called? Tartuffe. But I don't know. Theatre is very, very hard, you know. 8 times a week. You know, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Well, as I say, if anybody can rest on their laurels, it's you. But you're also very. I mean, you're an activist as well.
Well, if somebody asks me, I can't say. Listen, no, I can't be bothered. I mean, I was asked to do something with UNICEF, you know, and they do amazing work, you know, and it's so terrifying when you see what's happening to children all over. Of course, but I'm not, you know, I'm not asking to, you just do it as quietly as possible, you know. And I mean, as we were driving here and we saw this poor homeless lady with a baby in her arms, and Angus gave some money out you know, it breaks your heart in a way, you know. And we have it in Ireland, and of
course we do.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
But you've been very good about speaking out. When you speak out, you know, people will listen. If people like me speak out, nobody pays any attention. They will listen to you, and so I think it's been very important that you do.
Well, I'm sure if you did, they would.
Well, I'm not so sure. But anyway, it's that doesn't mean we shouldn't. I don't know if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question, or is there somebody online? James, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? although we can't hear you, so maybe not.
Wait a minute. Difficulty as well.
So we can hear you now.
I'm only on audio. I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulty.
That's fine. We can hear you.
I have kind of two questions for Stephen, who I'm a big admirer of. He mentioned obviously The Crying Game, which is generally considered Jordan's best film, but another film I think is equally as good is The Butcher Boy, which you made with him. I know you only. Can you talk about that experience? Because one of the things about that is that the novel itself is very hard to adapt. You have to find the right actor, and of course, he did succeed in getting it. Can you talk about how that film came together, etc.? And then, if I may, my second question was, I have an intuition that Jack Lemmon was a big influence in your acting career. Is that a correct one, and if it wasn't, what are your influences as an actor?
Who was
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walter Matthau. Yeah.
James, are you in Brazil somewhere, or are you joining us from Ireland?
Oh no, I'm in São Paulo. I couldn't be there this evening, but I'm in São Paulo.
Okay, thanks very much. So Butcher Boy.
No, you're quite right. It's a magnificent book, and Neil's genius was that he wasn't intimidated by it, and he knew that he had to go a long way with it to make it work in the cinema, and I think he did, and I don't know that anybody else would, because Neil is an equally great novelist as a filmmaker, and he's absolute. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. There's no question about it. It also does help if you have a big budget, and he had a big budget for that, which, because it's a small town setting, people don't think, well, did he have... But I can see lots of places where he's got a lot of camera movement that costs a lot of money to get on the day, and so that helped a lot. But people in Hollywood didn't even know. People would say, "What's he doing that film for? That's just, what's that about?" Yeah. They didn't get it, But no, I think it's a great film, and Pat's a great writer.
And in terms of influences on you as an actor, any particular influences?
Well, I'm sorry to say, not Jack Lemmon. I think he's very showy offy, I do love, I mean, everybody loves Brando, I think he took everything to a new level. I loved Cary Grant. I do love Walter Matthau. I think he's unbelievable. Don't know who else. I don't know who else.
Oh, that's a great. Fabrizio, go ahead.
Yes,
Oh, we can't hear you, Fabrizio. Is Fabrizio in Brazil?
You have to put, no, not here. You have to turn on the micro.
Put your mic on, Fabrizio.
The micro is open. It's open. No.
All right.
It's better to get out of the room and come in again because it's a problem with it.
Well, you better do it quickly, Fabrizio, because we're about to wrap things up. So I don't know if there are any other questions from anyone in the audience wants to. Please, so let's kill the mic for now, and please, Owen.
I just have one question. I have many questions, but we don't have time for that.
Okay.
But we always hear about with actors and actresses, etc., that there's always one film or one script that they got that they didn't take, that they turned it down. Is there any one that sort of sticks in your mind or memory of you wish you maybe had taken it and didn't?
No.
Or you're just being discreet?
No. No. I know a good script when I read one, and I just feel very, very fortunate that I was around when Neil started thinking about his movies, and Well, I was at one point. I mean, I was offered two movies at the same time. One being directed by Robert Altman, and one directed by Roman Polanski.
Oh.
And I accepted Altman because I adored him. And I couldn't do both. And I would have loved to have worked with Polanski as well. It's just one of those things, you know. But you know, Altman went and died not long after, and I absolutely adored him, you know. He was just a brilliant, brilliant man.
So we're going to fit in two more very quickly. Fabrizio, if we have sound. All right, three, but very quickly. And then we'll come to Rosario, and then, but we'll try and keep it brief. Please, Fabrizio?
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a student who's translating Cypress Avenue, and my question is regarding that. Actually, I recreated it. I brought the action of the play to Brazil, thinking about this dichotomy and this, how can I say that? But the competition of ideologies undergoing here in contemporary politics in Brazil. But I only saw the streaming version of Cypress Avenue during the pandemic. It was incredible. Your performance is so incredible. And I would like to know what kind of tips you have to give us. How do you get inside of this disturbed mind of Eric, and how a performer could play this very, very disturbing role?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but I always think that the actor should not necessarily like the character he's playing, but feel a great sense of identification with him. And I kind of, I did like him, you know. I did think he was. I think if you're going to, it's no good making him even more horrible than he is, you know. You have to. But it's a wonderful role to play because you've got a lot of jokes, and if you screw up, you've got a lot of time to fix it, and I don't know what the equivalent sectarian quandary is in Brazil. But I mean, I found it very interesting to feel sympathy for someone who I normally wouldn't begin to feel sympathy for, you know. Is there a similar sectarian standoff in Brazil?
Maybe slightly different, but the intensity is there. Yeah.
Between.
Well, it's a political one, I would say. I'm speaking on behalf. I should get you guys to chat about this. But maybe Maria Rita, it's your student. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, well, Jerry Adams is ruler in his version.
Okay.
The former president.
Right.
Currently tried again. It's the beard.
Right. Okay.
So the clock is not our friend. So please, Rosalie.
Okay, just a quick question. Do you think that the independence, the separation of the two Irelands, in a way jeopardize, and I say jeopardize in lack of a better words,
I haven't heard all of this.
the Irish culture?
Rosalie, can you repeat the beginning of your first sentence? It's hard to hear. There's some drumming outside.
The independence of Ireland.
Yeah.
The separation of the two
The partition.
Irelands,
Yeah.
In a way jeopardize, and I say jeopardize in lack of a better word, the root of the Irish culture, because kind of there were two countries instead of one, and perhaps the theater and the culture were in a way, jeopardized in a way
By partition?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it's basically the impact of partition, yeah.
Well, I think partition's a terrible tragedy, I do. No question about it. And it has encouraged positions that are not helpful for some people. And we mustn't forget that in 1790s, the Protestant people were incredible champions of Irish freedom. And then they got pushed out of the way of that, and I think it's awful. I don't know I don't know how the extreme unionists are ever going to adjust their position so that they can participate in. But I do think Ireland has to be united. It has to be. It's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. But let me just say as well, that in many ways it wasn't just the loyalists. I know that Catholic people went to Dublin 100 years ago and said to two different people. One was Ernest Blythe, who used to run the Abbey Theatre, and I actually worked in it but I didn't know this about him. But they said to, "Can you do something for us, because we're going to be a terrible minority in this northern state?" And he said, "We're not going to do anything about it. Go on back up the road and get on with it." That was said. Then O'Higgins, who was another politician there, said the same thing. He said, and by the way, let me tell you, we've spoken to the British about this, and we've told them we are not going to have anything to do with this. So that in a way left the Catholics in the north with an impossible situation, to be under the thumb of unionism. It's wrong. It's
Oh, Brexit's been a disaster. I don't know if you saw the brief film that Stephen made for the Financial Times about Brexit, but to my mind, I mean, that was so powerful. Obviously, it didn't make a difference at the end of the day, but it was...
it made a lot of difference. I mean, it mightn't have made a difference, but it was written by a girl called Claire Dwyer Hogg. It was a wonderful thing about how losing the momentum across the border will impact on everyone's lives in that country, and it is tragic. And by the way, I have to say, the protocol is not why the DUP are not in government. They're not in government because they don't want to be in a government with a party that is larger than them.
Exactly.
They don't want to be told what to do by Catholics. They've got to get their minds sorted out,
Okay.
But sorry.
No, totally with you there, please.
You can call Maria.
No, we'll go to Mariana last. Please,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, so I was just going to say, my question is about the concept of the fifth province that the fifth company brought with it as a sort of the province of the mind, a place for reconciliation. We talked a little bit about the fifth province. I have read a lot about it in academic books, but I'm so curious to hear from you.
Well, we didn't invent it,
The legacy that it might have.
Yeah, we really didn't invent it. It was Richard Carney, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
It was. Yeah.
And he was sort of on the edge of Field Day because he was very friendly with Dean and Heaney. But there had been a fifth province, I think, and it was I suppose it was just to have a sense of something that was very creative and positive, rather than being defended one against the other. It was, you could join that province and actually for a brief time, Field Day did work for a lot of people, but there were a lot of people found ways to disagree with it, and which was very upsetting, and And, you know, the problem is there's no way to carry on with two opposing mindsets. You can't do it. And I do believe that Ireland needs to be independent, and I believe Scotland needs to be independent, and I wouldn't mind Wales being independent as well.
We could keep going.
Yeah.
So I really think the last question then is to Mariana. So Mariana, can you release your mic? And
she is responsible also for the translation of the journal, the Amazon Journal of Project Case.
well, congratulations.
The organizer of that translation.
Yeah. And where are you, Mariana? Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Mato Grosso, in the Midwest of Brazil, practically a different country in terms of distance from São Paulo. And Jane, I know we're very short on time, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank Stephen. It's really nice to see him at the university. And I know that this talk is not about Roger Casement, but I fear I will not have another chance to ask you. I would like to know if there was a favorite part when you were playing Casement in Secrets from His Smile, because apart from being one of the translators of the journal, I also helped with, like bits and pieces of the script. Mm-hmm. So I would like to know if there is a favorite part, if you could answer. Thank you.
Oh, everything you did, I liked. No, I mean, look, I just loved the immense heroism and generosity that was embodied in Casement's words and being, and I wish people in Ireland would recover their admiration for him the way you people have here, because he was, his view on human rights is something that we all should share. Yeah. I really believe that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So folks, listen, we've been here for an hour. Stephen just flew in. It's chilly. So maybe we draw it to a close, and that was a really nice question to finish with, because you are here. This was an extra, but you're really here to launch the film tomorrow, and obviously there's a very busy schedule anyway. Lots going on the next couple of days. I think on everybody's behalf, Stephen, also everybody online, it really is to thank you. I mean, it's been a fabulous conversation, and it's a true privilege for us all, I think, to have spent the last hour with you. I'm really, really grateful, and maybe we can all just show our appreciation, and thank you very much indeed. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Owen.
Can I just say a quick word? And I think, while Stephen's here, we'll be happy for the next few days, and it is a busy schedule. We've had Jane for maybe 2.5 weeks.
God help them.
And I think I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here, but I know I was saying on the first lecture, and I've left you with a sort of re-energized enthusiasm for history, which I studied in our rival college of UCD. But I know from the last few weeks, and just from talking to you in and around the lecture series, etc., that you've brought an incredible energy, an incredible intellect, but just an incredible person to Brazil. And while you've been here 9 times, I'm looking forward to the 10 times. And I think it's important because we talked about the 5th province, we talked about a field day, we talked about what I was doing for Irish culture in Ireland, but what you are doing for Irish culture outside of Ireland, with Laura, with Mariana, with Aurelio, with Angus, etc. I just think it's when I arrived in Brazil as part of my role, I just couldn't believe the level of interest and passion and sort of, I guess, use of Irish culture, Irish studies, and our best writers, and some of the writers that some of us have not heard. Yeah. You introduced them all to the population here in Brazil, and I just want to say to Jane, you've really re-energized me, and I know you've re-energized the class also, but to Laura and to Mariana as well. Congratulations on such a successful 3 weeks, I think. Really successful.
Yeah.
So, good of us as well.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.